Live streaming.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, now. There's some noise. Can I continue? I see. Now it starts again. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are starting just now this conference on Jammu and Kashmir. And I think it's necessary to do it just now. Because of the corona crisis, it's the danger, the big danger, that the public attention is concentrated to the virus, to the sickness all over the world, and then made it happen without public attendance. So it's our duty now to focus our view to these events, to the event that happens in this region of the world, not to forget them, to help them in their difficult situation, and to make our statement public. So I would be very happy if everybody of you would make some statement about his personal experience, about his will to it. So I pass over to Mr. Majid to lead the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor MEP Buchner. Now, from my side, I welcome you all to begin with. I think most of the people...
Can you...
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rambu, are you listening?
Yes, I'm listening.
Could you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. Yes. You can't
so
hear
things
me?
Are not
you can't hear me? Maybe you have put yourself on mute. He's not able to listen. Professor, are you able to listen?
Let me. Seems to have a bit of a low connection.
Professor. No, he's not.
It's got a low connection, that's why.
Sorry, now I cannot hear anything.
You cannot hear anything.
I see. So I have already said something. Could you hear it? Could I start again?
I can hear you, sir.
We can hear you.
Sorry, so I should start again.
Okay, go on, sir, again.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's okay now?
Yes, it is okay, sir.
Yes,
it is okay, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so should
Strange.
Should I start again? Sorry, Mr. Rambu?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
I hear you now.
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Something is going wrong. Hear me.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Go on, sir.
Now I can hear you.
Good, sir. Go on, sir.
Yes, so I simply say once. Oh, very good. So once again, very welcome to this conference on Jammu and Kashmir. And
What is this?
sorry?
Yes.
Go on, sir. Go on, sir.
It's a
Professor, may I?
I simply say
Professor.
once again, very welcome to this conference, and I'm so
What's the point? It's not going through.
yes, and I think this conference is very necessary now. At this moment, because of the coronavirus, the attendance of the world goes in a different direction. And I think we have the duty even to focus the public attendance the events in this. So I simply ask you to give your personal statements, and we want to listen. We want to listen to your experience in this, what you have to say. And finally, we want to come to some conclusion, which has been prepared by Mr. Frank Schreiber-Roth. So I hand over to Mr. Drambu to direct the contributions of everybody of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. It was a little bit of interruptions, but I believe Naba, it improved at the end. So thank you for your contribution. We'll come back to you a bit later. Now, I just want to add a few words from my side before we go on to the main speakers. My side, obviously, I welcome you all to this COVID-19 Kashmir conference. Grateful for your cooperation. It has not been easy, and grateful for your patience. To be quite honest, practically.
Hey, so you continue?
Yes, I'm continuing now, sir. You handed over to me now.
I have stopped.
Yes, sir. Prof, let me continue now.
Sorry.
Prof, let me continue now the rest of the.
I cannot hear you.
We'll try to reach to you, sir.
Mr. Trambu,
Yes,
can
sir.
you take over?
Yes, I am taking it over, sir.
He has already taken over.
Yes.
Apparently, you cannot hear me.
I can hear you, sir.
Where
is the cursor? Hey. I can hear you.
Something is going wrong.
But I can hear you.
Yes, so I tried once again. Just very quickly, welcome everybody here in this conference, and yes.
Yes, Professor.
I cannot hear
let
you.
me carry on with the conference now. Okay. Can you someone phone? Phone.
I cannot hear you.
Prof, I will try to reach to you via telephone. Okay.
Hello, can you hear?
Hello. Can we get some time to? I think the video is quite freezing again and again. Can someone fix it up?
Yeah, we are trying to do that. Can you give him to me?
Mr. Trambu, I think it does not make sense with my connection. Can you simply continue?
Can I throw some light on the COVID-19 in Kashmir crisis?
Anyway, Prof, can you pass on the phone to Prof, please? To Mr. Buchner. No, I know he's in conference with me. Can you pass on the phone to him, please? Yes, please.
I don't hear you.
Yes. I know he is not able to talk to us. So I want to talk to him on the phone. No, I don't need the password. Just give him the phone, please. Okay. I think we continue. We continue now with our rest of the conference. I think I believe Professor Buchner has some internet problems, maybe. But I will continue again. I hope everybody else is able to hear me.
Yes, we.
Well, okay. Practically all of us have been, one way or the other, those all who are in the participants in the conference here are involved with Kashmir conflict, one way or the other. As all of us know, it's the 73-year-old United Nations recognized issue subject to Kashmiri's right to self-determination, which has been denied exclusively because of India's intransigent behavior. That self-determination has not taken place till today. So over the years, Kashmiris have been demanding the right to self-determination. Consequently, India has used its military might and power to silence Kashmiris and the political leadership. A huge number of pronouncements on the human rights situation, including self-determination, have come from the world leaders. Reports, resolutions from the international organizations such as United Nations, European Union, and from the non-governmental organizations such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and ICJ, and many more. The recent two. Yes, Professor.
Can you put up your hands, please? If you can hear me.
Just 1 minute, sir. Professor, let us, we'll try to improve the connection with you. Let's leave it for the time being, and we will see later what is yet to happen.
Somehow it doesn't work.
Is anyone listening to me?
Okay.
Mr. Tabu, can you just take over? My connection doesn't work.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Is it a panel discussion or is it a lecture discussion?
Okay, I will continue now. The recent two reports from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, published in June 2018 and July 2019, is the testimony to horrendous human rights situation in IAJK. But the whole point really is there is torture, there is arbitrary arrests and detention, there are judicial and extrajudicial killings, and there is a total lockdown as well. Iran has presented two reports to the United Nations. One is on the arbitrary arrest and detention. Both that report is with you, and another report is on arbitrary detention. That report is also with you, and those need a very strong intervention in terms that whatever is highlighted in those reports, particularly in relation to the we believe that there is genocide in Kashmir, and we believe that the arbitrary arrests and detentions are going on irrespective of whatever the situation is there. Of course, COVID-19 is a global pandemic. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims of coronavirus and their families. But the most unfortunate part of this is that Government of India, even in this pandemic, has made Kashmiris subject to outrageous human rights abuses, there are lots of reports, both from very well recognized channels, news agencies, such as BBC and Al Jazeera, which I have shared with some of the participants, and which very clearly show what is happening even during this pandemic period. You have the document with you, with the program, which says salient features of the conference. And we have highlighted 3 points which are of importance. Indian authorities using the pandemic to silence the Kashmiris' voice and even eradicate the Kashmiri leadership and the civil society. We are concerned that the Indian constitution was modified in order to change the status of Kashmir, allowing a demographic change, and the process has begun to make Kashmiris a minority in their own land, and that IAJK is sealed off since the beginning of August of last year, not from March this year, but August of last year. Nonetheless, information is smuggled out that most of the political and civil society key leaders have been arrested and put under house arrest. We are filled with consternation that those imprisoned are exposed to the other prisoners affected by COVID-19. That includes our leadership as well, which is mainly detained at Tihar jail in New Delhi and in various other prisons all over India. There is partial internet service now there, but there is no complete internet services, and there is no 4G in IAJK. So these are my thoughts on which the conference should run. And I think with that intervention, I hope everybody is able to hear me out. I will now pass on to the distinguished speaker, and that is President Carles Puigdemont, who of Catalonia, who is also a member of the European Parliament. I hope we will be able to hear him properly and without any interruption. President Puigdemont, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to the COVID-19 Kashmir conference. Obviously, these are difficult times for all mankind. The pandemic has spread all over the globe, and its threat is present in all continents, both in Asia and Europe, including, obviously, Kashmir and my country. In Catalonia, we have a particularly grave situation with the death of more than 7,500 people, which represents a dramatic 0.1% of the total population of Catalonia. In a context as serious as this, the Catalan government has not been able to deploy all efficient means available to it to fight the pandemic, because much of its power have been centralized by the Spanish state, unlike what has happened in the federal states like Germany, where things are much better. Especially in times of severe crisis, we in Catalonia miss our sovereignty, as Kashmiris probably do in their own case. People's sovereignty, only acknowledged by exercising the right to self-determination, is good to deploy agile, fast, and proximity measures to our citizens. It is not just a symbol. It is a way to improve our citizens' conditions. That is why we cannot stop claiming for full sovereignty in Kashmir, even in such difficult circumstances. We still live in a world where huge amounts of public funds are allocated for weapons, arms, and wars. This has to stop. Evidence from the coronavirus crisis shows to us that in the immediate future, we will need to be spend most of government's funds on research, health, and prevention of new pandemics. The coronavirus crisis offers new arguments for resolving worldwide conflicts as Kashmir's, and we can't lower our guard. We must be alert to the new centralizing impulses of states, as it happened in India. We are not going to accept freedom to be calculated either in Kashmir or anywhere else. It is an insult to democracy that hundreds of Kashmiris, including leading politicians, lawyers, journalists, and so on, have been imprisoned in jails outside Kashmir just for political reasons. Now we need to add a new threat on their personal integrity due to the COVID-19, nor can we tolerate the fact that in the middle of the 21st century, a government disconnects its citizens from the internet. The COVID-19 lockdown over Kashmir is a double confinement since its citizens have been suffering from intermittent political confinements for decades, which were further exacerbated since August 2019. For all these reasons, as a member of European Parliament, I will continue from my responsibility to denounce the violation of human rights in Kashmir and ask the European Commission to support the exercise of the right to self-determination in Kashmir. Thank you very much.
We can't hear you, Trambu Saab.
Please unmute your mic.
Trambu Saab, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, that's good. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
I was saying to President Sir, thank you very much for your intervention. We are very grateful to you,
Yes.
for particularly for highlighting our prisoners issue, and particularly in the political and our leadership, which is in a very dire situation. We may come back to you a little bit later, and thank you very much for your intervention.
Yes.
Now I want to.
Can you continue?
Have we got Professor now? Now we have the next speaker in the queue, and he is Professor Alfred Desai, first and former independent expert on the promotion of democratic and equitable international order. Professor Desai has been involved with United Nations for decades, and obviously has constantly and very vigorously worked on the issues of human rights. He is not able to join us through the...
I can't hear you, can't see you.
Professor, you can't hear me?
I hear you well.
Okay, Alfred Desai, Professor Alfred Desai, please start your intervention without you being seen by anybody, but they will hear you. All of them will hear you. You have 3 minutes, Professor.
Thank you, Majid Trambu, and thanks a lot to Carlos Pong. Was pleased to hear your voice again. First of all, I wish
Yes,
to
please.
endorse the draft joint statement on the situation in Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir. As an old-time United Nations staffer, I want to recall the many resolutions of Security Council and General Assembly concerning Jammu and Kashmir and the necessity to conduct a referendum. As I explained in my report 2014,
please continue.
My report on self-determination,
Mr. Trambu,
that
please continue. My line.
Self-determination is a conflict prevention.
My line doesn't work.
A strategy that is indispensable for Kashmir,
Perhaps
as it is for Catalonia, as it is for the camera of Sri Lanka and elsewhere.
It's better.
It is
it better now?
Not only peremptory international law, jus cogens, it is also an obligation erga omnes of all states members of the United Nations. That has been made clear in repeated advisory opinions of the International Court of Justice. This is the advisory opinions on Western Sahara, the advisory opinions on Namibia, the advisory.
Can you take over, please?
Timor-Leste.
My connection is very bad. I hear you only from time to time, not continuously. So please continue.
Yes, I sent you an email precisely anticipating that the connection would not be good, saying that I endorse the joint statement and that I endorse the two NGO documents submitted by IRAM to the Human Rights Council at its 43rd
You
session.
Can't hear this.
I would add that in the light of COVID, it is imperative that India release all political prisoners and guarantee their health and security. I would also like to encourage all those who are listening to go on the internet, download the draft declaration on the right to international solidarity. This is a declaration drafted by Special Rapporteur Virginia Dunn in 2017, which has not yet been adopted by the General Assembly, but this is the time to do so. We are all on the same boat. It is an issue of international cooperation and international solidarity. It is an issue of supporting the work of the World Health Organization and pulling all forces together in order to fight this common enemy. But going back to self-determination, it is imperative that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have a referendum in which they can express democratically what their future should be. And the United Nations owes it to the people of Jammu and Kashmir and also to the people of Pakistan and to the people of India to make sure that this conflict finally ends and that it ends through negotiation, through mediation, through dialogue, and in the spirit of brotherhood and sisterhood, in the spirit of the United Nations Charter. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Albert Desires, there is just one issue that I want to raise with you at this stage, because since you're not on the camera, is on the demographic change. We are concerned about that as well.
demographic changes are actually not democratic. These changes are already prohibited in Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention of 1949, which prohibits the expulsion of the native population, and similarly prohibits the settlement of colonizers, prohibits bringing in the population, say, from mainland India into
Can
and Kashmir.
you look?
Recognized
Have
by
a look, please.
international lawyers. The problem is, like everything in the United Nations, it is highly
Doesn't work
politicized,
like that.
and notwithstanding resolutions of the General Assembly and Security Council, we've seen now nearly 72 years without any progress on the achievement of self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And of course, any referendum would be falsified, would be frustrated if they were to flood Jammu and Kashmir with settlers and then allow the settlers to vote. There is a decision of the Human Rights Committee in the case of Guillot et al. Against France, which makes clear that any referendum, any self-determination referendum, only the natives, only those who have a genuine link to the territory have a right to vote. So into Jammu and Kashmir in order to change the demographics of the territory, well, those settlers cannot vote. But right now, what we have to face is COVID. And as I already said, and also in some of my tweets, it is imperative that political prisoners be released. And that applies to political prisoners held in New Delhi. Well, that also applies to political prisoners, say, held in Spain, the Catalans. It is shocking, disgraceful that there are political prisoners in Europe, in particular in Spain. And it is imperative that political prisoners like Julian Assange be released from Belmarsh prison, bearing in mind that the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention and the Special Rapporteur on Torture, Niels Melzer, both have pleaded for his release. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Alfred Desais. Please stay online. We may need you a bit later. And for your information, Professor William Shabazz is also online, and I can see him. Welcome, Professor Shabazz. I can see him very well. But anyway, that is from Professor Alfred Desais. But before I move to Senator Mushahid Hussain Said and the Prime Minister Sardar Atiq Ahmed Khan, I have a message from Sarah Owens, who is a MEP of House of Commons of the British Parliament. She appears to have another engagement, and with your permission, Prime Minister and Senator, we will pass on the floor to Sarah Owens. Will that be fine?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, Sarah Owens, it's the floor is yours, please.
Please unmute your video first. Can't hear you.
We can hear you. I can hear you. No, but you have to. You're on mute.
No, we can't hear you. We can't hear her.
We can. You are on mute, Sarah. You are on mute.
Please unmute.
Is Ali around you? He knows. He was able to communicate with us other day, but I don't know. Sorry. She is unmuted. You are unmuted. I've been told you are unmuted. So what is the problem then? Okay, Sarah, give us few minutes to work it out from this end. I will pass on then to Senator Mushaid Hussain Saeed, who is the currently member of, not only member, the chairman of the Pakistan Senate and member of the Senate as a whole, but the chairman of the Pakistan Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, a very strong supporter of the Kashmir cause and Kashmir movement. And he has an excellent record of advocating Kashmir issue and Kashmiri's right to self-determination throughout the world. Senator, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, and all the good wishes to all our friends in Europe and Pakistan and Kashmir. I just want to to make 3 short points. Before I do that, I want to thank Barrister Majid Tarambu for taking a very innovative, out-of-the-box initiative, which is very timely, having this COVID Kashmir conference. And I would also like to express my condolences to the President of Catalonia, President Carles Puigdemont, on the 7,500 deaths in Catalonia. And I would also like to endorse Professor Alfred de Zia's suggestion that we support the immediate release of Julian Assange, who is a fighter for civil liberties and who has spoken the truth by exposing the cover-ups of the international establishment. Having said that, I just want to say 3 things. Number one, that despite the COVID crisis, the Indian regime led by Mr. Modi in Delhi has continued with its divisive, negative agenda, both within their own country and in Indian occupied Kashmir. And they have been basically dividing the people on the basis of religion, which is unacceptable. And this has been also highlighted in the international media. I was seeing a story yesterday in The Guardian, a newspaper which talked of the arrest of human rights activists like Gautam Navlaha, who spoke on Kashmir, and also in the New York Times. So I think it's important to expose that the lockdown in Kashmir, which is 255 days old, is a political lockdown, which is not linked with the COVID lockdown. So that's important, and they have been suffering since August 5th, 2019. Secondly, a very important development took place in our region. 8 weeks ago, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, visited Pakistan for 4 days. I had 2 meetings with him and detailed sessions with him. And he was very clear, the UN Secretary General, that the Kashmir issue should be resolved according to the United Nations Security Council resolutions, which are valid, seeking the self-determination of the Kashmiri people, and that it should be based on the respect for human rights of the Kashmiri people. And he asked for the release of all political prisoners and also the ending of the lockdown. So I think there's a certain political and legal legitimacy to the Kashmir cause as enunciated by the United Nations Secretary General in very clear and categorical terms, and we highly appreciate that. Third point is that what is the way forward? I think it's important that we bring to the notice of the international community. We in our parliament also have been doing that. We had been having good meetings. There's a decision to hold international Kashmir conferences, send special envoys abroad also, and interact with our parliamentarian friends all over the world. But that is on hold till this crisis of coronavirus is over. But at least for the time being, we can demand the release of political prisoners. We know our friend Yasin Malik is suffering in Tihar jail in New Delhi. We have other instances also, and also the issue of internet and the ending of the political lockdown in occupied Kashmir, which has kept the Kashmiri people totally out of the loop as far as the world is concerned. And I think it's important that one basic lesson of COVID-19, which is relevant politically and geopolitically, is that issues today cannot be divided on the basis of boundaries. There are principles which are paramount, and we have to have a collective approach to solve these issues in Kashmir. Among the political issues is paramount because it is inextricably intertwined with suffering humanity and peace, security, and stability for 1/5 of mankind which resides in South Asia. I thank you all for your patience, and I again compliment you for a very good initiative. And thank you all our friends for being here this evening. At least this evening in Islamabad. And I bring you greetings from Pakistan and from Islamabad. We are also in lockdown, but we have a lot of time to think and reflect and review what's happening in the world, because the world has shrunk in this global crisis. And we wish you all the best. Stay safe, stay secure, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mushahid Hussain Said, for that lovely and very powerful presentation. Prime Minister, I will still try Sarah Owens first, if that is okay.
Yes, I'm fine.
Thank you, sir. MP Sarah Owens, I think you can be on now. I think they have worked out. So, floor is yours, please. No.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Sarah wins.
No, we haven't got it. Sarah, sorry, I think we still haven't got you. Unfortunately,
Tazinga, oui. Tu peux venir un moment?
Attends 2 secondes.
Oui.
Attends.
I think I was muted, and I think you people couldn't hear me. I will now give the floor to the Prime Minister, Sardar Atiq Ahmad Khan, who has been twice the Prime Minister of Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and he is currently the patron of the fundamental and the oldest political party of Jammu and Kashmir, known as Jammu and Kashmir Muslim Conference. Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Barrister. Good afternoon, everybody. I welcome this initiative by Professor Bushner and Barrister Majid Tarambo for organizing this conference over the serious situation escalating in Indian-occupied Kashmir when almost the entire world is locked down. I'm sure the world would now realize the pain and suffering of lockdown Kashmiris are going through for almost 9 months. In this situation, we need to be very specific in our efforts to bring a say of relief for the Kashmiris in the Indian-occupied territory. It is almost unbelievable that despite the unity in the world against coronavirus, Indian Hindutva-obsessed BJP leadership is taking this as an opportunity to continue their racist agenda. This racism against non-Hindus, especially Muslims across India, was very well taken up by a BBC report last week. India should have taken the lead as a big brother in the South Asian region to set an example for other countries by announcing a ceasefire in the time of global turmoil. But there were most heavily firing along ceasefire line, recorded after several years in the recent days. It must also be noted that Indian aggression against Pakistan is diplomatically sending message to Beijing, as well as we all know that CPEC projects are still going on with the same pace against all odds. In my opinion, we should focus on two aspects: release of political prisoners and efforts to stop the demographic changes in Indian-occupied Kashmir. It is very unfortunate that while the prisoners in many countries are being freed due to this pandemic, political leadership, especially elderly leaders like Saeed Ali Gilani, along with Yasin Malik, Mirwais Umar Farooq, Asiya Andrabi, Shabir Shah, and others, are still behind the bars for political reasons, essentially. We should highlight that Indian authorities may allow a group of international human rights organizations to visit and report about the health and safety conditions of Hurriyat leadership. Then the other important aspect is the demographic changes that India is forcing in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Declaration of non-Kashmiris as Kashmiris is against all legal, political, and social norms of humanity. What to talk of UN Charter and resolutions? On the top of it, it seems like world power corridors are not bothered about it at all, despite highlights by the credible Western media. Indian government has already started distributing the domicile to non-state Kashmiris with the prime focus on administrative and military sector. This step, along with others by the Indian government, is admittance of its failure to change the will of people of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir by all the inhuman and brutal tactics through highest military concentration in the human history. I suggest to the worthy participants and organizers to mobilize their respective foreign offices in this regard at this critical time of history for entire mankind. For instance, Senator Mushahid Hussain Syed is among few very credible political wise on foreign affairs, especially Kashmir and CPAC, so he can call such meetings of policymakers in Pakistan, and likewise others can make an effort in their respective regions. This conference shall also continue in small groups across the globe to create unanimity and force in our voices. Secondly, I can foresee that socio-political, strategic, economic, and defense fabric of the world will not be the same after this pandemic. Therefore, I suggest that we should carve out a process to formally or informally include Chinese participation in our Kashmir debate. CPAC and Kashmir are now a reality. We need to act accordingly. I once again wholeheartedly thank organizers and participants, especially Professor Bushner and Barrister Majid Tambu, for this very timely initiative that reminds me of a famous saying, when there's a will, there's a way. My best wishes and prayers for the safety of all human beings.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister, for your kind words. And you are really the illustrious son of an illustrious father. Sardar Qayyum Khan Sahab was a great Kashmiri leader and a good friend of mine. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Prime Minister. You are amazing as always, and we value your contribution quite a bit. I don't know what is the score up for Sarah Wayne.
Right now, a message is being prepared.
Okay, then we move on to the other speaker, and I hope she is here, Julie Ward. Julie, are you somewhere there? Can you hear me? Julie is not here. I think she was there. I could see her earlier on, but the next I would like to see if there is Professor Nazir Ahmad Shawl. Professor Nazir Ahmad Shawl. He was there, but he's not there anymore. I can't see him either. No, but no, it's true. Well, we'll try him later. We'll go to Professor Joseph Louis Allais. Now I can see him very well. Professor, of course, Associate Professor of Asian History at the Faculty of Geography and History at the University of Barcelona. He has a specialty on China and India and Kashmir matter, and he has visited Kashmir many times. Professor has, of course, made a point in an email to me that we missed one L in his, I think, Louise. I think so. Professor, I apologize to you for that. But Professor, for now, the floor is yours on Kashmir.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me make just a very short, brief reflection from Catalonia where, as you know, we also have, unfortunately, right now, as Professor Alfred Desayes said, and also President of Catalonia made the remark, we also unfortunately have political prisoners in Europe. So let me make just this brief reflection on what I think are very basic principles, which despite the COVID-19 crisis, we should keep in mind and not forget. So the right to self-determination is part of the founding treaty of the United Nations and gives the people the capacity to decide on their political future, freely prioritizing independence, integration, federation, or regional autonomy. It's out of question that the people of Kashmir had this right implicitly and explicitly plenty of times acknowledged since many decades ago, but without the possibility to freely exercise it. Now, a completely new crisis, a health crisis, is threatening us all, and some states take the opportunity to hide political conflicts from open scrutiny. We cannot tolerate it. The democratic relation between individuals and governments should always be based on respect for human rights, and therefore for the right to self-determination as well. We must help resurface the Kashmir issue to the international and European arena. Mentality presuming as an absolute truth that borders are forever should be erased from a democratic and free world. They have nothing sacred or eternal if those borders were born from conflicts and wars. It is time in our century to make them to be born from people's free will, from their votes. In other words, from democratically exercising the right to self-determination. And this should be clearly the case for Kashmir. And many other people in the world are asking for self-determination, like Catalans, Greenlanders, Kanaks, Tibetans, West Papuans, or Uyghurs, all over the 5 continents. It's certainly a long list, demonstrating that deeply rooted conflicts don't just vanish as if by magic. The world and Europe must support a democratic and peaceful solution for AAJK, for Kashmir. And now, I think, as a first goodwill gesture, the world would expect that Kashmiri political prisoners, starting by Mr. Yassin Malik, they should be released based on humanitarian reasons because of the coronavirus crisis. When this terrible health crisis is over, there should be no space for more lockdowns in Kashmir. It has been too many and for too long time, for decades in Kashmir. It could be, I think, the starting point, and we should help in that, hopefully, for a stable and finally a fair solution for Kashmiri people who has already suffered too much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for your very kind and very thoughtful intervention. We will be now moving on to Professor William Shabazz. I can see him, and he's online. By the way, Sarah Owen, the British MP, will be sending us her written intervention, as her microphone on her laptop was not properly functional. But we'll leave that for later. Professor William Shabazz is a specialist in international criminal and human rights law and a serving professor of international law at Middlesex University. It's a pleasure to have you, Professor Shabazz. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trambu. You had asked me to report on the research I did regarding the opinion that was submitted by the NGO document dealing with genocide at the United Nations. This was the written statement of the International Human Rights Association of American Minorities that I believe has been circulated to the participants today. What I examined was the possibility of litigating these issues and where that could be done. So the document, of course, refers to the possibility of going to the International Criminal Court. The challenge there, of course, is obtaining jurisdiction, because in principle it would require that the territorial jurisdiction is conferred by the state. And so this would require, I think, India and Pakistan both ratifying the statute of the International Criminal Court. I doubt that that's likely to happen anytime in the near future, but that is what would be necessary for the court to exercise jurisdiction, other than obtaining a resolution of the United Nations Security Council, which is again a politically daunting exercise. The other possibility is taking a case about genocide to the International Court of Justice. Both India and Pakistan are parties to the 1948 Genocide Convention. And indeed, the first interstate case taken under the Genocide Convention was filed by Pakistan against India back in the early 1970s, dealing with the status of Pakistani prisoners of war in India. And that case never went to adjudication. It was settled out of court between the two parties. The difficulty with taking a case that would be directed against India is that India has made a reservation to the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court when it ratified the Genocide Convention. Now, some recent case law of the International Court of Justice has suggested that reservations to the Genocide Convention that would exclude its jurisdiction are in fact impermissible. And so it can't be ruled out that the International Court of Justice would declare India's reservation to be inadmissible, and therefore to establish that the court could exercise jurisdiction in a case between Pakistan and India. But that's the obstacle, that's the hurdle that has to be overcome. So this is my small contribution to this conference, to this conversation. One final point, perhaps, is simply that the option of taking cases alleging genocide is also open to states individually under the principle of universality of jurisdiction. So the charge directed against public figures, military leaders, and so on could be taken before domestic courts in many countries to the extent that they allow for universal jurisdiction. Of course, there has to be the political will to do it, and this is not always a straightforward matter. So that's really all I have to contribute to this discussion today. Thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thank you, Professor. Indeed, we have been talking and discussing about this, and if Alfred Desais, Professor Alfred Desais is hearing me, he has been part of this as well, and we'll see how we will progress. And your opinion is very valued, Professor Shahbaz, and I'm sure that Kashmiris will see some hope in any form of litigation. But we'll continue the discussion on this. Thank you very much, Professor Shahbaz. Now we go on to I believe to Victoria Schofield, who is of course a very well-known a personality on Kashmir, and she's an author and historian. Her main area of research has been the conflict of Jammu and Kashmir, and she has traveled quite a lot to Kashmir. Almost every year, I suppose this year she traveled there. Victoria?
I was meant to be in Kashmir now, in fact, but because of the COVID, not I have to say because of the Indian government, because I'd got my visa, but because of the COVID lockdown, I've not been able to go this year. And actually, apologies that I'm not very well at the moment. But greetings to all my fellow travelers in this this issue which concerns us all, those in Pakistan, Prime Minister Mushahid Hussain, all my friends over there. Good to be sharing this panel with you, and thank you, Margit, very much for setting this up. It's not easy technically. If I hadn't been told exactly what to do, I also might have had problems getting online. But I think it is very important. I want to pick up on a point that Mushahid has made, that we're all in this, so to speak, lockdown. It's become a word that we've been familiar with, which we didn't ever expect we would have to endure ourselves. But there is a difference between the COVID lockdown and the political lockdown. And I think this is what we're witnessing. And it's really almost since I was last in Kashmir, the valley has been under lockdown. It is slightly relaxed at the moment. As we know, they've got 2G, but not 4G internet facilities. But again, I would stress that in the 21st century, what right does any government have to restrict something which we consider to be part of our human rights, part of freedom of speech, is having access to the internet, to the World Wide Web. 50 years ago, it may not have existed, but now that we do have it, to lock down people and prevent them from being able to use the internet, particularly at times of crisis. And this is the point that I would like to make, that I think, you know, if we feel we want to check something on the internet medically, we know that our national health system in the UK is available to us, but we can check on the internet. But not to be able to have access to information on the internet regarding the COVID virus, because you've only got 2G and it takes you too long, I think is really not right, and we should be lobbying against that. And I also think, just picking up on the point about political prisoners being released because of COVID, they should be released anyway. There shouldn't be political prisoners. As we know, since August the 5th, a number of young Kashmiris have been picked up. In fact, the reason they're not in jail in Kashmir is because there isn't enough space for them in jails in Kashmir, and they've been taken to other parts of India. And I really feel that perhaps this, out of this terrible pandemic, which does know no barriers, has affected all countries, some good can come out to realize that this is not the way to live lives and to treat people. We're here for a finite amount of time on the planet. It may be shorter. And picking up on Alfred's point, we all owe it to the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the people of India and Pakistan that this conflict, which has been going on for decades, should be resolved for the betterment of all the people, the billion in India and the millions in Pakistan and the millions in Jammu and Kashmir. So I'm delighted to be able to participate and take part in this conference, because I have studied the history, I have studied the issue for a number of decades. And like everybody, we wish everybody well. We wish them a peaceful, prosperous life. Thank you.
Thank you. Victoria, for that wonderful presentation. I hope and wish that this worldwide lockdown comes to an end at some stage, and that at least you are able to travel to and bring us some good news from there. And I wish you well. You don't, you did look that you are not very well.
I'm not as well as I should be, but I've just got a very bad head cold.
Yeah.
But thank you, Margit. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We go now to the next speaker, and that is Graham Williamson, who is the chair of Nations Without States. He has been a very strong supporter of nations' right to self-determination. In fact, he has now started a petition on Kashmir, through which he wants about 100,000 signatures to bring the matter before the British Parliament, House of Commons, to have a full-fledged debate on Kashmir. Therefore, I urge all the participants and those who are hearing us now to sign that petition, and we will also distribute it from our side, the petition to others, so that he is able to put together 100,000 and force the debate in the House of Commons. Mr. Williamson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Majid. Thank you for the invitation today. I'd also endorse the conference features and reports that you kindly sent to me or to everybody in the conference today. I do support that. It was interesting to hear everyone's contributions today so far. Some obviously, some very personal. You know, I don't live obviously in Kashmir, so it's very interesting to hear people who actually do live there to find out what's happening. It was also especially interesting to hear President Carlos Puigdemont's contribution. He's one of our self-determination heroes. I don't want to repeat the previous presentation. I just very briefly want to look at the awareness, how we can create the awareness of Kashmir during this present crisis. Because most people are really embracing and concerned about the lockdown, obviously throughout the world. And even before this lockdown, the awareness of Kashmir was very limited. And of course, that's India's prerogative. India's attempted to keep people in the dark, and they've been very successful, as you know. With COVID-19, this has exacerbated that problem. It's limited the bandwidth of anything else occurring in the world, and the public consciousness, it's been quite limited. So I think the most important at the moment, and the most urgent challenge is to break through that silence, particularly that the fact the silence was deafening beforehand, let alone now. And obviously nobody's thinking about Kashmir, nobody's thinking about other countries. They're mainly concerned about their own country. I understand that. That's very natural. I understand that. But there's things that we can do. Of what I would call the 5 estates, one being government, international governments and organisations like the EU or the AU, NGOs, the media and the public, all of those estates should be looked at and should be lobbied. Now, Nations Without States, as Majid mentioned before, we're focusing at the moment on the public domain, the public estate. Obviously mentioned that we've just launched a parliamentary petition, very challenging to reach 100,000 people. Also, it has to be UK-based people who can sign it. I think we just launched it the other week. I think we have about 1,000 so far. We are going to advertise it. So hopefully it will reach out an awful lot more people. Everybody here in this conference is welcome to support it. If we do, I think, raise 10,000, the British government is obliged to respond to us, to advise us of what their position is. Obviously, if we get 100,000, we'll have a debate in Parliament, which I think would be quite wonderful if we could achieve it. We're also going to produce memes, social media memes. For instance, give you one little example about the lockdown. I think Victoria mentioned this earlier. Obviously, everybody's talking about lockdowns in the world. Well, Kashmir has been in lockdown, obviously, since August. But the word itself is interesting to people. So we're going to produce memes saying that perhaps you're concerned about being in a lockdown, but think of Kashmir. They've been in lockdown since last August. Very important. So I think all groups and individuals must attempt to reach out to at least one of those 5 estates whilst we're in lockdown. We have the beauty of the internet, the beauty of this conference today, which we wouldn't have obviously without the internet. And it's something we can develop in the future. I'm sure Majid is thinking the next one. So it's very important that we push the Kashmir plight at this time much higher up in the world's consciousness. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of things to be said. We're going to do our little bit. Obviously, some very honourable and very knowledgeable people in the conference today. You also can reach out to people, and hopefully we'll just continue doing the work that we do, and hopefully one day Kashmir will be independent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. You are a very dear friend, and on personal note, I'm very grateful to all the good work you are doing generally on the issue of self-determination, and of course, in particular on the Kashmir issue. We are there with you. Of course, we hope that we are able to get 100,000 signatures round, and you will force the debate in the House of Commons. Thank you very much for that brilliant contribution. Now, before I give the floor to Frank Shual-Bahut, I see Professor Scholl finally here. We have missed you, Professor. Professor, can you hear me? No, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Professor. You are muted, Professor. Can you unmute yourself?
I am unmuted.
Yes, now you are unmuted. Professor, we have missed you. Professor Scholl, please. Professor Scholl is a very dear friend and my colleague on Chicago, and he is, of course, the executive member of the organization of Kashmir Coalition, with co-host of today's event here, and Professor Scholl is an author.
Hello,
and he has written an excellent. Can you not hear me, Professor?
I'm hearing you.
Okay, good. And he has written an excellent poetry book called Speaking Silence. Now on Kashmir, he has Professor Scholl, can speak briefly on Kashmir. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Klaus Buchner, distinguished friends, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Barrister Abdul Majid Trambu, for assembling a galaxy of distinguished participants to keep the oldest unfinished agenda of Kashmir in world focus. At a time when there is a global emergency due to COVID-19 virus, I welcome you all for time to express solidarity with the people of Jammu and Kashmir who are confronted with a health emergency on one side and also an aggressive militaristic policy of an occupying fascist and supremacist state on the other side. Ever since the supremacist government came to power in Delhi, it has pursued a policy of a civilizational conquest by invoking Hindutva and polarizing Indian polity on the basis of religion. A Kashmir-specific, iron-fisted, terrorizing plan was also envisioned. It has been systematically implemented in phases. Its contours were formulated through a doctrine called Dole Doctrine. From 2014, intensification of catch and search operation was started, targeting the Kashmiri youth and increasing the political and incarcerating the political leadership and strangulating the democratic space for any peaceful political activity. After winning a second term, in 2019, Modi government decided to demolish the constitutional relationship of the state of J&K. It needs to be reminded that in Indian occupied Jammu Kashmir was placed in a lockdown on 5th August 2019 after India abrogated Article 370 and 35A of the Constitution, annexing Kashmir and Ladakh illegally to its union. The people of the territory were brutalized and curfewed, as well as this is the time when states have been provided the best opportunity to start a process of reconciliation. This I'm saying in the light of the statement that was made that was made by the United Nations Secretary General, who said that at this time, when there is a global emergency, we must put the conflicts on one side, and we must because resolving the conflicts and putting these conflicts in the right perspective need reconciliation between nations. My dear friends, I would not take much of your time, but I would like to point out that, as I have already said, that there is a global emergency on one side, and Kashmiris are also facing this emergency. But along with this emergency, they are facing state terrorism, and India is trying to utilize this space, utilize this opportunity to implement this plan. And in this connection, a demographic change has been started, and some laws have been enacted, and recent law, domicile law, is one of the factors, is one of the things that has been recently done, and this is to change the demography. And there are other things are also continuing, and the repression and operation is continuing. I would like to, because this is at this time when the world is facing this global emergency. I think the nations of the world must feel the suffering of the people of Kashmir, who stand locked down for the last more than 9 months. They are in the lockdown, and they need some relief. They need international presence. They need World Health Organization to visit. And at this time, I also endorse the statement of the United Nations Secretary General, who has said that there should be, the political prisoners should be released. But along with this, I also endorse the perception of United Nations Human Rights Commissioner, who has been repeatedly asking for an international monitoring of the situation in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, which is not coming forth, and this needs to be done. And I would also request, because this meeting has been convened by the president of the APPG of the European Union, I would like to suggest that the trade talks that are going to take place between the European Union and India must be conditioned by the fact that human rights are of supreme importance, and human rights and trade are the two sides of the same coin. This needs to be said. And in the end, I would say that the ICRC and WHO must also be allowed to visit the Indian jails. And once again, I would remind the international community that our state of Jammu and Kashmir is politically fractured, psychologically tormented, physically bruised, and administratively terrorized. And at this time, I would end with the statement that Kashmiris need to fulfill their aspiration, and their struggle for right of self-determination need to be honored by the world, and they must support them in this noble cause. Thank you for giving me a hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Scholl, for that very powerful presentation. Julie, I can see you now. Julie, can you hear me?
Yes.
Julie Ward is our former member of the European Parliament, representing the Northwest region from 2014 to 2020. But besides that, she is a real human rights champion. She has enormously worked on human issues, as well as she has worked on, to be quite honest, on disabled people and young people. She is 24/7, all the time, for people, and we are grateful to have her here and grateful for her work. Julie Ward, the floor is yours, please.
Sorry, colleagues, I just had a problem with my connection, but I'm back now. First of all, thank you for continuing to maintain a vigilance about what has been happening in Kashmir. During my 5.5 years in the European Parliament, we were facing always a kind of wall of silence and disinterest often in the situation. Obviously, I represented a huge Kashmiri diaspora in the northwest of England, but in the European Parliament, I came to know the whole European diaspora. And the cause is a noble cause. It's an important struggle, and it's really shame on the international institutions, shame on the world for not upholding human rights. I'd just like to say a special hello to Shamin. I know she's online somewhere. I can't see her. But just before the lockdown happened, we were due to meet together in Geneva to once again speak at the UN Human Rights Council about the particular violations and effects pertaining to women and children, which has been a special cause that I have pursued. So I'm very worried about ongoing human rights issues, which I think are going to be overshadowed and ignored and also abused, really, through this crisis, because it gives a convenient cover to many countries who don't want to progress legitimate human rights concerns. So Kashmir, I have to say, Kashmir is not alone in this. There are many places and many people who are going to be, whose causes. Sorry, there was a big noise there. So I've read the statement, and while I was not able to be online, I actually made a few suggestions to the statement that we will endorse. I think that my edits to the statement make it stronger. I'm also a native English speaker, so I can make sure that it is the best English that it should be. So I don't want to take up a lot more time, but just to say that I think that the fact that you have called this meeting today, that you are live streaming it, that you have brought together parties from so many different parts of the world, from lots of different political persuasions, people who are continuing in their own struggle as well. You know, we have a struggle here in the UK. We have a government now which could force through a hard Brexit under cover of the pandemic. So we are also struggling. But thank you for doing what you're doing. I just maybe say one final thing about the issue of trade, because I was in I have been to, some of you know, I've been to India, I have been to Pakistan twice, and I have been to Kashmir. The issue about trade is really important. The European Union, the European Parliament passed a resolution supporting the UN binding mechanism to make human rights part of trade agreements. So please remember this, okay? I know that we passed that resolution last autumn. I was still in the Parliament. I voted for it. It passed with a majority. So the Parliament, this current legislature in the Parliament, has already signed up to the UN binding mechanism for human rights in trade agreements. And you should get your hands on a copy of that resolution and on the UN document, and you should use it in your advocacy, because the UN I often talk about incoherence, policy incoherence, or policy dissonance. The EU talks about policy coherence when it talks about development policy, but often it is doing dissonant policy or incoherent policy. So we need to make that point wherein by one hand we pass a resolution supporting human rights, and whereas trade agreements in another department might actually ignore those human rights. And we need to be ready to point those things out and to call for coherence, policy coherence. Okay, thank you very much. And courage.
Thank you very much, Julie, for that very, very wonderful contribution. You have worked on Kashmir quite a lot. We look forward working with you in future as well. You are in our hearts and minds, and we rely on your continued support. Thank you very much indeed, Julie. Thank you. We have now Madam Shamim Shal. She just now Julie made reference to her. Yes, I can see her, and here she is. Madam Shamim Shal is a very active Kashmir women side, and of course she has worked immensely on women's issues, Kashmiri women's issues throughout her life, and she is a very regular visitor to the United Nations Human Rights Council, has raised the issues there and at other forums around the world. We are grateful for her contribution, for raising the voice of Kashmiri women. She is a permanent representative to the United Nations of IMWU. Mrs. Shawl, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Barrister Trumbu. Thank you, friends, for organizing timely video conference at a very crucial time. I appreciate all my friends who have joined this event. As I heard your percepts, I would like to focus on 3 areas that need the international attention. On one side, there is the threat to the pandemic, and on the other side, the Indian state terrorism, which continues unabated. An authentic report indicates that during the prolonged lockdown, 93 people were killed, 963 were injured during these days. Entire pro-freedom leadership, activists, politicians, and civil society members continue to remain under house arrest or in the jail. The women arrested are Asia Indrabi, Hamida Sofi, and Nahid Nasreen. Hina Bukhari, along with her husband, was arrested in Delhi. Kashmiri scholar Safura Zargar, during PhD, was also arrested in Delhi. In addition, half a dozen female members like Saima and Insha Tariq were arrested. India continued its anti-Kashmir policies, and world is busy with combating coronavirus. India has implemented its anti-Kashmir laws. I should suggest that Brits and EU parliamentarians should take initiative to launch a campaign globally in conjunction with United Nations to resolve the situation in Kashmir and resolve this dispute. I request Sayyid Mushahid Hussain Sahab to mobilize the parliamentarians in Pakistan to write a joint communication to UN Secretary General, appreciating his concern about the Kashmir prisoners and requesting him to unfold this preventive diplomacy in this crisis situation. The situation is very vast. The media, Indian media, is engaged in propagating that everything is right, but during lockdown and crackdowns and search operations, the humiliation continues and women are the front four soldiers there who are facing Indian brutality and forces humiliations. Therefore, this is the time, proper time, that world will understand what lockdown means. World will understand what this emergency means, what life means to those who are without rights. Therefore, at this crucial time, I will request on behalf of my people, especially on behalf of women who are under threat and they need immediate relief. They need World Health Organization's intervention. They need Amnesty International's help. They need Red Cross. We need Red Cross there at this crucial time. Therefore, I request all of my friends, especially the women who are here in this conference, to come forward and do something. I know that world is very busy, people are busy, and we have a threat to life, but we are already facing this threat in Kashmir during these 30 years. Therefore, I request and I thank you all that you are here at this time and you are thinking about us, you are thinking about the Kashmir for the solution of Kashmir. Thank you very much, Barrister Trambu.
Thank you very much, Madam Shawl, for that very moving presentation. You are a champion of Kashmir and Kashmiri women. I thank you very much to you. We want to be now, in fact, if we could now go to Altaf Hussain Wani, who is chairman of Kashmir International Kashmir Institute of International Relations. Mr. Wani, I can't see you anywhere. I think he is not online anymore. Dr. Asif Dar, are you somewhere online?
Yes, I'm there.
I can't see you. No, Dr. Asif Dar.
I'm there. I'm there.
Okay, Asif Dar is a Kashmiri activist and a human rights defender by profession, a doctor of medicine. Can you now start your presentation? And if it could be brief one, we would want to finish in another 15 minutes, please. Frank, to you, my request to you is that we will give you the last word, both in terms of your presentation and the presenting the draft joint statement, which Julie has said has corrected quite a lot, and you will go along with the presentation, and you will also have closing remarks for and on behalf of Professor MEP Klaus Buchner, who has not been able to to remain online because he couldn't hear. His system technical defect was there. Will that be okay, Mr. Shwalbahoff? Yeah, good.
Yes.
Now we start with Dr. Asif Dar, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without wasting the time, I'll directly go to my presentation. Before I go to the political side of it, let me start with two medical issues right now we are facing in Kashmir. One of the issues is there is a total lack of personal protection equipment on ground, which is being provided by the non-governmental organization rather than the government. The another story, couple of days, it was carried out by the newspaper Hindu that the 5,000 test kits that were supposed to go to the Kashmir were diverted to some other place. Considering the importance of the test kits right now, it is not only condemnable, it is criminal. Now let me come to the political part of it. When the world was fighting COVID-19, on 1st April, India introduced the domicile law, in which it states that any other guy living from the outside coming to Kashmir, living for 15 years, will be a citizen. And when you combine this domicile law with another draconian law, that is CAA NRC, you will find out that the citizens, that the native Kashmiris will be their citizenship will be in stake, actually creating a space for the settler colonies. And Indian police chief in Kashmir has gone on record saying that anybody who opens their mouth on this, on social media or anywhere, he will be taken to task. This guy has gone on record. Multiple FIRs, arrests have been made to people who have talked about, who have raised an alarm, and I am one of those victims. The families are suffering. Wherever they can reach, they are trying to harm us. Probably, if I go to Kashmir right now, you might not ever be able to hear from me again, considering the amount of human rights violation that has happened on ground. Another point I want to make very quickly is the UN chief had made a very clear point before for the ceasefire. Right now in Kashmir, the Indian occupational forces are obsessed with door-to-door searches, and it's actually a big risk for COVID-19. Why is the social distancing in Kashmir? I could not understand. Another important thing, August 5, thousands of Kashmiri prisoners are lying in jails. I would like to make a special reference to Mr. Asif Sultan. He was a journalist, jailed for a story, got an international award, and he's still in jail. Thousands of leaders, thousands of young kids, they are in Indian jails. And considering the Indian jails quality, the age group of our prisoners, there is a huge risk that these can be probable mortalities. Before I end this, I would like to request this panel to consider our condition. 8 months in lockdown, the world just saw it now. It's a routine, normal part of our life. I would request you guys to push on the government of India to release all our political prisoners, all our equal rights for healthcare regarding COVID-19. None of our tests should go here and there. Restoration of high-speed internet so that our healthcare workers can follow the world issues there. Immediate withdrawal of all sorts of pressures. All family members, all FIR should be withdrawn immediately. And one more request I would like to make, please do it, push for the right to self-determination, which is the ultimate goal. Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ashraf Dar, for that very, Asif Dar, for that very medical-based intervention, and of course on the political message that you gave about Kashmir and for the people of Kashmir. I applaud you very much. I can see, I had seen Shaista Safi online. I can't see her anymore. Is she still online? I thought that she might be in. Yeah, Shaista is there. Shaista Safi is a young Kashmiri and one of my very favorite Kashmiris because she has energy to advocate and diplomatically handle Kashmir, and a young person. She has been a TV anchor when she was in Islamabad, but here she is settling down, and with the duration of the time, I'm sure she will do much stronger work on Kashmir. Shaista, the floor is yours for a very limited time because I want to finish it by 4 o'clock, and it's all yours for next few minutes.
Thank you very much, Trambu Saab, and a very timely effort from you. And as always, you have taken this initiative. So a lot of appreciations for you. A lot has been already said. I'll second what Ma'am Shamim Shawl said, and brother before me who speak, Dr. Asif, who said, now the world will understand what we Kashmiris have gone through. They'll understand what a lockdown is. They'll understand what is life like to live in continuously living inside house when they are still not facing what Kashmiris are facing. They don't have occupational forces outside. They don't have guns on their they don't have guns in their TV lounges and drawing rooms, but still the world would understand Kashmiris now that what kind of torture, what kind of mental torture they go through when they are in the lockdown, when there's no food for their children, when there's no milk for their children, when they are not allowed to go out for their medical checkups, when they have to go to hospitals but they are not allowed. Now the world can understand and they can relate. So now is the best time for Kashmiris to lobby and tell the world that this is what we have been going through since decades now, and try to understand. And now is the point when world can understand what Kashmiri people, Kashmiri youth, Kashmiris, especially the women, as Ma'am Shamim Shawl has already mentioned. This is the time when the lobbyists, those who are educating Kashmir, they have this crucial time to let people of the world understand and make them realize that the basic human rights we Kashmiris have been demanding, the basic human rights what we have been asking for, is not like what you are facing right now. This lockdown, this COVID-19 lockdown is for your safety. But what we Kashmiris have been gone through, this is against our human rights. So blessing in disguise after this, whenever this pandemic issue goes away, for the lobbyists and for the advocates, Kashmir now, we can say that from a blessing in disguise, that it will gain momentum and people will understand more on emotional basis and on personal basis that human rights violations and what the mental trauma Kashmiris have gone through, and those physical trauma and mental trauma, both they'll understand it more. So we the advocates, we the lobbyists for the Kashmir, we have this time now, and after this pandemic is over, we will have this opportunity to let people know that the physical and mental trauma that people have gone through this COVID-19, this is something just a glimpse of what Kashmiris have gone through in decades of occupation. Though we cannot compare the occupation with this lockdown, but still, just to let people know what a lockdown is, we can use this example and we can let people know that this is just a glimpse of what Kashmir has gone through in all these decades. I thank you all.
Thank you, Shaista, for that very innovative presentation from you. And I hope you will continue much strongly the work on Kashmir at the relevant power corridors and where it really matters. I wish you
Video guidance.
uh,
Video guidance.
indeed, it's always there, and I wish you all the luck for that luck. Now, we have practically come to an end to the speakers. We have a few journalists here, such as, before I pass it on to Frank Shualba, we have Wakam Malik of Spark Media Center, Abdul Latif Butt of Kashmir Watch, and M. Ashraf Wani of Associated Press of Pakistan, and Zulfikar Ali, who is a very well-known journalist, has written many books, and indeed has been BBC reporter in AJK for nearly 20 years. If any one of you are willing to contribute, it will be very much appreciated. While you are making your mind up, I would wish to now go to the message that Sarah Owen has, MP of the House of Commons of the British Parliament, has sent me just now. I will read out to you. I apologize for technical issues at my end, and since I cannot communicate my solidarity over video, I shall do so over this message function. I thank you all for your kind invitation to today's conference. It has been an honor to hear from all the experts and politicians during this conference. It's unfortunate, shameful that individuals are using the spread of COVID-19 to further spread fear, hatred, and political division. This will only exacerbate humanitarian issues in Kashmir and across the world. I sincerely believe that this global crisis needs an international response and then Donald Trump's threat to remove funding from the WHO is a deeply retrograde step. During this immediate crisis, a real challenge which my team and I are currently working on is to get people home from across the world, particularly British citizens of Kashmir and Pakistan. And I am grateful to the support of the community as we work together during this difficult time. I continue to send my heartfelt solidarity to the people of Kashmir, especially during this difficult time. This was the message from her, and it will be accordingly recorded. Do I hear from any of other participants whose names I just now took? Did we have any? Can I hear somebody, please? Is Zulfikar Ali online? No, I can't see hear him. Waqar Sab, are you online? Abdul Latif Bhatt, are you online? Okay.
I am online.
Would you like to add your thoughts very briefly before I hand it over for concluding remarks and adoption of the conference joint statement to Shwalba Hall?
Okay, I would like to add one point only. The point is, India is playing dirty games always to occupy the disputed state of Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan bashing is one of the major tactics to hoodwink the world community with the purpose to hide the deployed occupational Indian committed atrocities. At the same time, India is trying to win the time to impose practically its plans when the whole world, including Jammu and Kashmir, is battling with COVID-19 coronavirus outbreak. United Nations, European Parliament, and other bodies working for the global peace and human rights need to develop pressure on India to restore the high-speed internet at the times of COVID-19. It is the problem of India that believes that Kashmir will give priority to fight for freedom than to fight the coronavirus if high-speed internet is restored. It should not be a problem for the world if Kashmiris are fighting for their rights guaranteed by UN Security Council resolutions. So I request the participants from Pakistan to speed up to counter the India-Pakistan tactics that is damaging the Kashmir cause at international level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Latif Bhatt of Kashmir Watch. Now I will go on to give the floor for his concluding remarks, including his own personal views, concluding remarks for and on behalf of MEP for Buchner and for the discussion on the joint statement. I have two messages here on the joint statement. And I will read those messages later when Frank Shwalba Hott will be on line. Now, Mr. Shwalba Hott.
Hello, bonjour. Greetings from Brussels. My name is Frank Schwalber-Hoth. I'm one of the founders of the German Green Party, and I was one of the first Green members of Parliament in Germany and in the European Parliament. And since the very beginning of Kashmir activities in the European Parliament, I'm linked to this work together with Majid Trambu. During the last week, we have consulted several players on elements of a joint statement, because if we have such an event like this, it is important to find a conclusion which can be transmitted to the concerned parties in this conflict. Therefore, I will read you now this conclusion. And if you have any remarks to it after every paragraph, please shout towards Majid that we can add it. First paragraph, we agreed to organize and to hold COVID-19 Kashmir conference via video link.
Sir, I have one question, sir. One question.
Yes, please.
Live streaming is on.
Do you have a question to the first line or to what?
Go on, Frank, go on. You read on, please. Everybody, please listen. And when Frank gives the floor,
I propose, as Majid said, that I read a paragraph, and at the end, if you have a remark, please give it, not during the reading.
Can I just ask, are you reading the version I corrected, Frank?
No, I haven't received it yet.
Ah, okay. I already made some suggestions.
Because all of us received a version from Majid.
Give me the laptop.
This morning, the last version, therefore I read it.
Okay. It's just I can't.
Julie, I will see if I have received it and I will read them.
Okay. Because I'm going to have to go, so I can't stay for the reading of the statement. But I just wanted to make sure that, I mean, I made some suggestions. They're not major, but I think they're helpful.
Okay, I propose, as your modifications are linguistic, that we add it, that we include it into the text.
Yeah, some of them aren't. Some of them
strengthen. As structure of this meeting is and should be democratic, it is necessary that we read the text and ask people if they have objections to the content.
In that
Draft
case,
joint statement on the situation. The text is the following. Draft joint statement, situation in Indian administered Jammu and Kashmir during this COVID-19 pandemic period. First paragraph, we agree to organize and to hold the COVID-19 Kashmir conference via video link to take stock of happening in Jammu and Kashmir on the ground. We have, in the past, over the years, either followed the conflict or have been a part of it. Individually, we made recommendations, advised the international community, and undertook concrete proposals to overcome the deadlock in that territory in the Himalayas. Is there any objection to the content, not the linguistics? No? Then second paragraph. Now, we want to bring together our expertise, our experiences, our aspirations, our ideas, and our proposals to ensure that Kashmiris' fundamental human rights are protected and promoted, and their right to self-determination realized.
OKC.
Any objection to the content?
Not an objection, but a suggestion. Sorry, not an objection, but a suggestion that you also include the word knowledge, our experiences and our knowledge, and that's in my. I sent that.
Yes, okay.
Because we have knowledge.
Okay,
as
knowledge.
Well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I think that is a very positive element to add. 3, we know that the Kashmir conflict is not the only burning subject in international politics, but we shall continue to undertake all such measures to maintain the Kashmir conflict higher on the agenda at the international fora. Any objection to the content?
Frank, can I make a point? It's Victoria here. I think we should put
Yes.
the Jammu Kashmir conflict, because the issue is the Jammu Kashmir issue. And I think that has to be there, because if we're increasing our knowledge, one of the problems with the issue for people to understand is Kashmir and what Kashmir is, and it's the state of Jammu and Kashmir. I think that's very important, bearing in mind, you know, the Indian government has made Ladakh part of Gilgit-Baltistan, Ladakh. That's also an issue. The state
Okay,
today is
therefore,
Jammu and Kashmir.
Therefore, to put then Article 2 and Article 3 instead of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir. Is it this?
That, I would like that, if anyone else is in agreement.
Thank you. Then we are coming to a point. Pardon? That means that we change the word Kashmir in Article 2 and Article 3 by Jammu and Kashmir.
Because that's the official term of the dispute. Otherwise, people think we're only talking about the value. And for the dispute to be resolved, you've got to resolve the whole issue.
You're totally right. You're totally right.
Okay.
We are coming now to point number 4. We are conscious that the crisis around COVID-19 pandemic is overshadowing all other pressing issues worldwide. Therefore, we are especially concerned during these unprecedented times that the Indian authorities are using the pandemic to silence Kashmir by eradicating Kashmiri leadership and civil society. Any objection or to the content of Article 4?
Don't have an objection, but I think I suggested the wording of silencing Kashmiri voices. I mean, Kashmir as a concept is a place, but it's the silencing of the voices, which is the issue. And I also suggested demoralizing
and destroying.
I also suggested the addition of or the change to the civil society, which is demoralize. I can't.
Demoralizing and destroying.
Yes, demoralizing and destroying, because there is an issue about this constant attack on to try and destroy, to try and demoralize people so that they don't rise up, so that they do remain placid, they don't have fight in them anymore. And I think that this policy of demoralization needs also to be made explicit.
I think from my side it's very positive, and I think if there are no objections against this, we include it.
Frank.
I agree with Julie
Yes.
on the Kashmir representative Kashmiri voices, because they may find some voices. They're trying to cultivate a leadership, but representative Kashmiri voices.
Yeah, well, I mean, like people like us, even. I'm not Kashmiri, but people would try and silence all of us who speak up for Kashmir.
Yeah, well, I think we've got freedom of speech. We can continue speaking. We won't be silenced. Yes.
Now, when these changes are accepted, we are coming to Article number 5. We are concerned that the Indian Constitution was modified in order to change the status of Kashmir, allowing a demographic development to convert Kashmiris into a minority in their own land, and the process began, and that Jammu and Kashmir is sealed off since the beginning of August last year. Nonetheless, information is smuggled out that most of the political and civil society key leaders have been arrested or put under house arrest. We are filled with consternation that those imprisoned are exposed to other prisoners affected by COVID-19.
Frank,
Any
again,
objections to the content?
The smuggled out, that is not strictly true. There is limited contact. I've had a lot of messages from people in the valley. They've not smuggled them out. They've managed even to telephone me. So I don't think the word smuggled is correct.
Yeah, smuggled instead of managed. There are a couple of...
Okay, then something like transferred.
1 minute, Frank. There are a couple of changes made by Julie as well. She says, since the beginning of August 2019, including internet shutdown, and has made some English corrections. Those are taken on board. That is fine.
Yeah. I put internet, sorry, I put internet shutdown in there because that is also part of the problem. Yeah, this lockdown, this shutdown, this being sealed off is not just about borders. It is, I think the shutting down of the internet again needs to be explicit in our text. So, and I wanted to put the date in because I think it's always important to have dates rather than just like last summer. Being very specific about dates in the text is really important.
It's 5th August. It's 5th August.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I said August, whatever I put.
You said August, but it is 5th August.
5th August.
Yeah.
I think that's important. But I think, partially lifted is important. Otherwise, it weakens the case because they'll say they're not totally locked down. They can communicate.
Okay, yes. You're totally right with partial lifted.
Yes, I think.
Now to article number 6. In the version which you have, it says we see this as an attempt to physically eradicate the Kashmiri leadership. Now, in article number 4, we already used the word eradicating Kashmiri leadership. That is one. And second, altogether, we have 13 points. And in Europe, 13 people who are superstitious, it's a negative number. Therefore, the proposal from Carol was to delete this number 6 because we have already mentioned eradicating Kashmiri leadership.
Are you listening to me?
Pardon?
Hello.
Yes.
Please, if you mention the women leadership, those who are in the prison, when you say the political prisoners, you mention only the men, not the women.
Okay. Therefore, to add male and female. Okay, we are coming to the next point. We note with satisfaction that the United Nations Secretary General has asked the Indian authorities to release the Kashmiri leaders and other political prisoners. Any objection to the content?
Well, it's a fact. It's a fact.
Yes. No. Next point, we urge other international institutions to join and to support the efforts of the United Nations. Any objections to the content? Number 9, we urge the European Parliament to continue with their strong involvement through urgency resolutions, initiative report, including physically sent delegations to both parts of Kashmir, global discourses, exhibitions, in overcoming the conflict. Any objections to this?
There are some changes, English-wise made by Julie, sending official delegations. That's all she has made. We will note those ones. Those are good suggestions.
I would also say resolving the conflict, not overcoming it.
Yeah, resolving the conflict is a better word. I totally
agree. Majid, was it an official delegation going to...
Physically sending official delegations. Physically
delegation.
Sending official delegations.
Okay. Number 10, we urged the European Union via its European External Action Service, EAS, to use their direct and indirect diplomatic channels to underline that any trade agreement will be without reach if the human rights situation, and especially the situation of those prisoners, is worsening, and that India, through sheer force, attempt to implement its planned democratic change, contrary to international law and the United Nations resolutions on Kashmir.
Again,
Any objection?
Julie has made some English corrections which will be taken on board. Those are absolutely correct. But I would suggest, hello, Frank, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you wonderfully.
I think somehow we have missed Organization of Islamic Conference, which has a very, very strong role to play. It represents 57 countries and another powerful organization. So we should add a paragraph for OIC as well.
Oh, I propose then to enlarge the article number 7 with satisfaction that the UN Secretary General and their OIC add.
Okay, that's fine.
Good. Next point. We urge the Indian government to allow international organizations to evaluate those prison conditions and to prepare the conditions under which the detained Kashmiri leaders and other political prisoners can be freed. Any objection to the content?
Use the word urgently prepare the conditions. Urgently. That's a good contribution.
Okay. We urge the Indian government to restore complete internet services, including G4. Any objections?
I think I'm sure we will endorse it.
Absolutely.
And the last one, we urge the three sides, India, Pakistan, Kashmiris,
no, it
to take
to the
concrete,
state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Put Jammu and Kashmir there instead of Kashmiris.
Okay. We urge the three sides, India, Pakistan, Jammu, Kashmir, to take concrete steps to enter into direct negotiations at a neutral place, Geneva, within the next 12 months. Any objections to this?
No.
Okay. Now, I have, in the meantime, I have spoken.
1 minute, Frank. 1 minute. 1 minute, Frank. Can you allow me to intervene for a second?
Yes, please.
Graham wants to speak something before you will conclude. So can we give the floor to Graham Williamson, my friend there? Graham.
Wonderful, Graham. Listening to you.
Majid, I also want to say something.
Majid?
Yes, go on.
I didn't actually have anything to contribute other to say that it's been a great conference. Obviously, difficulties apart, and I totally agree with everything that's been said and also the resolution that's been prepared. I don't know how you thought I was going to speak, but I'm just supporting everybody's hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Majid?
Thank you. Now,
yes, 1 minute. Alfred is online. Sir, please, Alfred wants to say something. Go on, Alfred.
Yes, I endorse all the changes that have been made. But beyond that, I thought it would be useful in paragraph 1 or 2. I think paragraph 1 could be added at the end. Pertinent United Nations Security Council General Assembly resolutions must be implemented, because there's all these series. There's a prehistory that should be taken into account. And in paragraph 4, when we're talking about the pandemic, you could add, in this context, we endorse the United Nations, or rather the Human Rights Council draft declaration on the right to international solidarity, because I really believe that it's a question of international solidarity that we need, and that is what must be emphasized in the context of COVID. Otherwise, there's no mention here of the two excellent reports, 2018 and 2019, of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights concerning Kashmir. And it would be useful to say we call for the implementations of the recommendations contained therein.
Absolutely right, sir. Absolutely right.
Just to tick it, because you have Security Council resolutions that have not been implemented, GA resolutions, the recommendations of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, they should be here somehow reflected. And also, because we are asking for international solidarity and we're appealing to the OIC and appealing to the European Union, etc., actually, why not mention this draft declaration on international solidarity that really should come before the General Assembly and be adopted? That's it. But I mean, I don't insist. You can do that at a later date also. I mean, I don't want to delay matters. I think that the text is good enough the way it is.
Frank.
No, I support your ideas to include it in the text, and Majid and me will include it in the text.
Okay, I'm going to send you an email, rather than sending Majid an email in which I suggest where you could put it in.
With exactly, that would be good. That would be good with the exact wording. Thank you, Alfred. Now, Professor Klaus Buchner has followed the whole conference visually, but he couldn't hear anything. Therefore, I called him in the meantime, and we agreed the following. First, and this text would be ready when Majid and me have worked on the final version. He will send it to all of you, to all those who have directly participated, and afterwards transmit it to the Indian, the Pakistani, and Jammu Kashmir authorities and the European Commission and to the media. And Klaus Buchner reiterated to me that he is prepared to continue the work in the European Union and the European Parliament when the lockdown will be finished, following the tradition which we have in the European Parliament since the late 90s of last century, to have an active group. He told me that he will focus, after the British have left because of Brexit, the British members of the European Parliament, to enlarge the number of continental members of the European Parliament working in this group in the European Parliament, to organize an exhibition on Kashmir, and to have a global discourse as soon as possible. Global discourse is the word for participants from India, Pakistan, and Jammu and Kashmir, and to continue to intervene to the Commission, our executive branch, to implement what has to be implemented by them. And he mentioned to me as well that his aim is, and the aim of the group in the European Parliament, that the European Union should act as an honest broker, because we have now a new Commission with a new Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen. We have a new European Parliament with more than 50% of new members of the European Parliament. And this 2 times new Commission, Parliament, is a window of opportunities to intensify the work and the success of the Kashmir Group in the European Parliament. And he mentioned as well despite that he was not connected by listening, that such a conference, video conference, during the lockdown because of Corona should take place once a month. And therefore, the question to Majid, will it be possible, Majid, that within a month you organize a second video conference on Kashmir? From him, a lot of greetings and thank you for your engagement, for your energy, and for all what you put into the fight for self-determination in Kashmir, in Jammu in Kashmir. Thank you. Majid, take over.
Yes, Frank, thank you very much for you're my very dear friend and my very dear comrade and everything else, to be quite honest. And thank you for that excellent presentation and adoption of the joint statement. In fact, Professor Buchner, MEP Professor Buchner is online. He can hear us, but we can't hear him. He has been listening very carefully, and we are grateful to him. Now, what can I say? This has been an amazing experience with somewhat hitches here or there, but we were able to get through it. And I'm particularly very, very grateful to President who has stayed with us throughout this intervention, which is nearly now 2.5 hours. And I'm very, very grateful to Professor William Shabazz, who is still there. And of course, the one who we could not see and he could not see us, and that is Professor Alfred Desires, a great personality, stayed on throughout. And of course, to everybody else, it's a wonderful opportunity to see all of you. And it's a wonderful thing, really, to have this interaction on Kashmir, and of course on other areas of conflict, and that includes Catalonia as well, President. It has been a wonderful experience, and I'm very grateful to Joseph, who in fact introduced us to this app, and I'm very, 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 very thankful to him as well. We will now leave you, and we will prepare the joint statement as has been corrected and endorsed, and send it to all of you before it will be released for your final approval. And then really, really, I thank you, all of you personally, on behalf of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And not to forget Victoria. I forgot.
I'm still here.
She is always there. She has been really a pillar to stand with us through and through. Very grateful to her as well, with us, and everybody else who has been with us throughout this 2.5 hours. It will send a good message. I'm pretty sure everybody, those who matter in the power corridors on Kashmir, on Jammu and Kashmir, I should correct myself, and I should learn it from Victoria, on Jammu and Kashmir, who are definitely watching this, listening to this, and I'm sure it will make some difference on the ground. We only urge India, those three things what were at the last in our joint statement. Please stop arresting Kashmiri people. Please release the Kashmiri leadership. Please restore the complete internet services. And please stop this, what is unconstitutional, unlawful, whatever you will call it, a demographic change that you are undertaking there. With these words, I thank you, all of you, once again, and I call this meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Majid.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, and thank you.
Bye-bye, sir. Bye-bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye, Majid. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sir.
Thank you.